Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here. And what is easily the question I most often get asked on this channel is, Nate, what graphical mods do you use for Skyrim? A few months ago I did a video that largely answered that question. However, since then my mod list has changed quite considerably, and evidently many of you have noticed. I've put off doing a second video on what Skyrim graphical mods I use, primarily because the list has more than doubled in size, and I wasn't entirely sure how I would be able to present everything in a timely, efficient, and easy to explain manner. But I think I figured it out. Before we begin, I must say that this mod list has been tried and tested for Skyrim Special Edition on PC, not for the original version. And while most of, if not all of these mods are compatible with Oldrim as it's now being called, if you're not on Special Edition, you may notice some slightly different results. Furthermore, some of these mods are available on console. Those that are will be pointed out in the description. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. We'll start off with my ENB. ENBs together with good lighting mods are probably the most important part of modding Skyrim's graphics, as they make major and much needed changes to Skyrim's post-processing engine. A game armed with a good ENB and lighting enhancements, and no other graphical mods, will always look better than a game with the best 4K textures and no ENB. So make sure that you use one, even if it's not the one I recommend. Most ENBs will look just fine. However, personally, I use Nyclix's ENB Reshade, with the Vivid Weathers preset. The way this mod handles depth of field, color correction, and ambient light, I especially appreciate. I feel as though Nyclix's ENB introduces some major improvements, but still maintains Skyrim's original aesthetic and feel. That said, most ENBs will look pretty great, so if you already have one you like, don't concern yourself too much about switching. Moving on to lighting, I primarily use two mods here, Vivid Weathers and the Enhanced Lights and FX mod. The latter of the two reworks static light sources, such as fireplaces, candles, and lanterns, to produce what can best be described as more realistic light. Colors and tint of light have been changed depending on the environment, brightness has been tweaked, new water reflections have been added, and a whole lot more. Vivid Weathers, on the other hand, is a bit of a 2-for-1. Not only does it improve the quality of raindrops and snowflakes, as well as introduce over 500 new weather patterns to Skyrim, but it also overhauls the way light works depending on those weather conditions. Now you'll find your world to be much brighter during sunny days, and more gloomy during heavy storms. Additionally, sunrises and sets look gorgeous. Next, I want to take a look at grass. This is something that I never really thought much about in vanilla Skyrim, and never thought about improving, until I tried out these two mods, and realized that I can never go back. Those mods are Verdant, a grass plugin, and Skyrim Flora Overhaul. Together, they not only increase the quantity of grass you'll see by a lot, but they also improve the quality of all of this new flora. Flowers will look better and more colorful. Certain regions of the game will have their own types of grass depending on their climate and location. It all looks both realistic and oddly satisfying. Though it is worth noting, due to the way that Skyrim handles grass, and just how much of it these two mods add in, they can be very taxing on older systems. So it might be in your best interest to just skip these two and save the frames per second. While we are still on the topic of plant life, let's shift our gaze to trees. Here I employ Simply Bigger Trees and 3D Trees. Simply Bigger Trees is rather self-descriptive, as it simply increases the size of Skyrim's trees to make them taller, something I feel makes sense and seems in line with what you would expect out of an area as heavily forested as Skyrim. 3D Trees, on the other hand, creates more detailed trees, increasing their polygon counts and sometimes also retexturing them. This has an especially noticeable impact on leaves and branches, things that look very two-dimensional in vanilla. Additionally, trees will now look much better up close. Moving on to our next category, landscape and architecture. Here I use 5 mods that can best be described individually, starting with Gecko's 4K mountain textures. This mod does one job: create new textures for Skyrim's mountains, and specifically the rocks that form them. It executes that job extremely well. When you consider just how often you'll be scaling, or even just looking at mountains in Skyrim, the impact this mod makes on your game is surprisingly huge. Additionally, I also run Nordic Snow, a mod that changes Skyrim's snow to look much more crystallized and handle reflections better, while also having much higher resolutions. Like mountains, you'll be staring at snow quite a bit in Skyrim, so I found this one to be a must. For a larger, much more generalized texture pack, if you will, I've gone with Asmodeus Skyrim Special Edition Retextures, a mod that changes dozens, perhaps even hundreds of Skyrim's textures to something of much higher quality. From castle walls to dirt on the ground, Asmodeus does a lot, and it does it all well, but it doesn't cover everything. For everything that the retextures I've already listed have missed, I like to use Skyrim 2017 textures. This mod covers many of the textures that Asmodeus, Nordic Snow, and Gecko's 4K mountains simply forgot, particularly in relation to the ground and landscape. And while it does retexture many of the same things as featured in those mods, I generally only use Skyrim 2017 to fill in the textures that those mods missed, or fill in the gaps if you will. Last in this category, I also use Enhanced Textures Detail, UV Tweaks. Contrary to its name, this mod does not change any textures. Instead, it alters the shapes and behaviors of the meshes and objects that they're applied to. It's rather difficult to explain in the time that we have, especially when you consider that I'm not entirely familiar with all of the techniques that this mod uses. However, essentially you'll notice that certain flat surfaces become much more 3D, and some surfaces become more smooth, others become more rigid. Furthermore, the method textures are applied to these various objects has been altered to make individual textures look higher quality by making them smaller. Though again, this mod doesn't change any textures by itself, so if you use a retexture with this mod, it'll still benefit from all of its perks. Now I would like to shift over to general clutter and miscellaneous objects. Spoons, ropes, barrels, sweet rolls, loaves of bread. For these I've employed the Static Mesh Improvement mod, the High Poly project, and the Forgotten Retext project. The first two, Static Mesh Improvement mod and the High Poly project, much like UV tweaks and 3D trees, increase the polygon count and improves the shape of various items, while also often adding in their own textures, to make them look more realistic. And damn is there an improvement. The High Poly project's work is mostly concentrated on items that you would find on a dinner table. I know I already mentioned them, but sweet rolls, loaves of bread, and various meats. No. All look better than I ever thought they could. The Static Mesh Improvement mod goes a lot bigger, and extends to improving the polygon count of ropes, benches, fences, and literally thousands of other items. Now, since the HPP and SMIM often use their own textures in addition to increasing polygon counts and changing shape sizes, means that you will have to let them override certain retexture mods, unlike the Enhanced UV Tweaks mod. The other mod I mentioned, the Forgotten Retext project, on the other hand, is something I like to slap onto everything that isn't covered by the Static Mesh Improvement mod or the High Poly project. It improves much of what those mods left behind and is quite diverse. Anything from axes to baskets is covered with this one, and it's one that I would recommend nobody forget. See what I did there? Because it's called the Forgotten I'm sorry. Furthermore, I also do specifically use book covers of Skyrim and unique booze bottles. Book covers of Skyrim creates unique handcrafted high-resolution covers for each of Skyrim's books. You can often read the title of a book right off of its cover thanks to this. Unique booze bottles does something similar, creating unique bottles for all of Skyrim's drinks, with their own branding and logos, and they all look pretty amazing. On to improving the appearance of characters. This is something I found to be quite difficult, as my choices were often limited between either flawless Japanese supermodels that didn't make much sense, or just stick with vanilla Skyrim. Thankfully, I finally found something that I really like, the Windsong Immersive Characters Overhaul. This mod improves skin textures as well as the facial construction of the game's NPCs, to make realistic but still good-looking characters. The WICO also specifically alters and enhances the appearance of a few unique NPCs, while still staying true to their vanilla flavors. A great example of this is General Tullius, who now has a good-looking beard that really seems to highlight his age and stress. Speaking of beards, who could forget Beards of Skyrim? This mod simply creates new textures for Skyrim's beards, all specifically handcrafted and at high resolutions, without breaking away from the vanilla style. Not much more to explain. A small mod with a big improvement. The next category I would like to discuss is equipment changes. I use 4 specific mods here. Improved closed-faced helmets, real bows, Semper Fi, and 4K Imperial Sword. Improved closed-faced guard helmets simply opens up the eye slits of Skyrim's helmets, which are otherwise colored in dark black. I feel this looks best on the game's guard helmets, however may take some getting used to for certain other headwear, like the Nightingale hood, where the dark eye slits add to the personality of the costume. The second I've mentioned, Real Bows, improves the models and textures of all of Skyrim's bows, which look pretty atrocious in vanilla. The mod also gives bows distinct styles and flavors. Imperial bows are composite and hardwood, whereas Elven bows are asymmetrical and made of bamboo. Semper Fi replaces the heavy Imperial armor set with something that I believe looks much more aesthetically pleasing, though admittedly not entirely lore-friendly. An Imperial Sword 4K creates a custom 4K texture for the Imperial Sword. And finally, we move into this video's last category, miscellaneous. 3 mods that didn't seem to fit in anywhere else on this list, but are still highly important. The first is Realistic Water 2, a mod that changes essentially everything about Skyrim's bodies of water for the better. There are now higher quality splash effects, water flows more realistically, waterfalls appear denser, objects in water bob gently, and more. Additionally, I use the watercolor preset, which makes water appear a fantasy-like teal color. The second of these 3 is Footprints, which gives the player character and almost every single type of NPC, including animals and non-humanoid races, their own footprints with particle FX when stepping in snow, water, or ash. It's a subtle change that combines well with Nordic Snow and Realistic Water 2. And finally, the last mod on this list is Wet and Cold, a mod that will cause NPCs to dress more appropriately for cold weather, as well as introduce a few visual effects, to combine with snow and water. When it's either raining or you've just gotten out of a body of water, water droplets will now start to fall from your body, and your feet will start splashing as you take steps. Furthermore, cold characters will now breathe out visible moisture from their nose and mouth, and snow will accumulate on hair and armor. These effects are now staples of modern games. However, Skyrim came out in 2011 and lacked such innovation. Thankfully, modders are still keeping it up to date. And that concludes our list. Links to each one of these mods' specific Nexus pages will be in the description down below, as well as specifications regarding which, if any, consoles they are available on. If you have any installation-related questions regarding what we've gone over, feel free to pop in my Discord server, where we'll do our best to help you out. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. If you have any recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everybody.